Hey guys, Eric and Chris here to talk about The Simpsons Guy, the long-awaited Family Guy Simpsons crossover. Full spoilers follow, so if you haven't seen it yet, we're about to give everything away.
You go watch it.
You go watch it, then come back here. What did you think of The Simpsons Guy?
I thought it was successful, and I had some skepticism going in. I was like, I don't know how they're going to pull this off, but I thought it was pretty funny. It had some lulls. We were talking about it slows down in places, but ultimately I think it's true to both worlds, and there's a lot of nice like Easter eggs both ways.
Yeah, you know, it was a Simpsons. It was a Family Guy episode. It was made for Family Guy, written by the Family Guy writers.
Right.
And I think they did right by the Simpsons, though. You know, they captured the feel of the Simpsons and that world and the characters. Because that was my concern a little bit.
Yeah.
Was like, would they change the Simpsons so much? But a lot of the jokes, of course, were about the differences between these two families.
Yeah, and the jokes themselves, I feel like, shaded towards Family Guy because a lot of the stuff was a little bit more adult, a little bit more than Simpsons would do, or a little more puerile than the Simpsons would normally go.
Right.
But I thought it all worked, and I thought like they did a really good thing in the beginning by talking about crossover episodes and how they're like never good, never more than the sum of their parts. Yeah. But like they set that expectation up, and so you felt like, okay, well, at least they understand what they've got here.
Yeah. And I liked a lot how, like, you know, they had the Stewie hero worship of Bart and stuff like that, because they obviously could have gone a completely different direction,
right, and
him just think that Bart is ridiculous because he has a slingshot and because, you know, what he's doing is so small scale. Yeah, and I liked the pairing of the characters was really interesting.
Yeah. There's the obvious Peter and Homer, and you know Marge, but the when you get down the scale, like the fact that they paired Chris with Maggie was really amazing to me, and then Brian with Santa's little helper. You're just kind of like, oh, poor Brian, you know, like probably the smartest guy in the room outside of Stewie.
Yeah.
So I thought all this stuff really worked, and the fact that Bart even called out Stewie at the end of like, you're kind of a monster, you know?
Right.
was amazing.
And I like, you know, again, it's something that you kind of had to expect them to do to some degree, but I did appreciate, you know, there was a lot of meta jokes.
Yeah.
And, you know, they said a lot of stuff. You know, there was the joke about, you know, oh, I used to love you, but it's been about 13 years of The Simpsons.
Right.
But then the idea of like, how close is Family Guy to Simpsons with like all the counterparts in the courtroom. Right. I thought it was even-handed, you know, as far as the jokes.
Yeah, they did a good job of balancing it, and I think they did give a slight upper hand to Family Guy. Like at the end, there was that symbolic moment where the like UFO crushes Homer, and he's like lying there dead, and I'm like, well, this is coming from a place of like the Family Guy is making this episode.
Yes.
And so, but I think all in all it was fair. I really liked the jabs back and forth. I think if you pay attention to this feud, it's been going on for many, many years, and you know, there's been more than a few like vicious barbs between the camps.
Right.
So seeing this like played out on screen is interesting.
And then there was also some, you know, fun stuff as far as the cameos from other animated characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, having Bob from Bob's Burgers, and I can't remember the exact line, but how it's like he needs our support.
Yeah,
you know,
he can't fly on his own. We have to carry him.
Right.
And then Cleveland crashing and burning. But it's like I like that they have a sense of humor about their own stuff and other people's stuff too. But like they have a sense of humor enough to say like, oh, yeah, Cleveland's show didn't really work out. Yeah, it's fine.
And the you know, the Roger from American Dad thing was kind of just there, but I did love the Fred Flintstone cameo because it was, you know, it was all this like, you know, who's, you know, is Peter a ripoff of Homer and all this back and forth, and then it was like, hey, here's the guy that kind of came first. You know?
Right. This is what everybody's ripping off. They should have had, you know, actual, you know, honeymooners show up. Right. And then we'd really be, really the
through the looking glass.
Exactly. What do you think of the chicken fight?
The chicken fight was, you know, definitely, look, it was great that they did it. I mean, every time we were covering this episode in the past few months, people were kind of actually legitimately excited that Peter and Homer were going to fight, and it did get into the like who they wanted to win thing, which is always funny. But you know, you and I were talking before about this episode in general. I did think was probably a little longer than it needed to be, but again, I guess there's no perfect world that they were going to let it be like an episode and a half.
Yeah.
And so the chicken fight was one place where I kind of felt like they got their point, and then it went a little bit longer than it needed to.
I think they stretched it in parts, and then there's that one line where Peter's like, oh yeah, we're only used to doing this for half an hour.
Right.
And it was kind of like, okay, well, we realize that this is probably like in places going to be more than what you need.
Yeah, even them getting to Springfield, I was like, this doesn't need to be like 6 or 7 minutes before they get to Springfield.
I never say this, but I think that if, we watched it on a screener, but I think that if there were commercials inserted in between,
right.
I would have been like, it would have been a different experience for me. Like I would have been like, oh, I want this thing to come back on.
Yeah.
Rather than like, this is dragging at this point.
Yeah. And then, at the end of the day, it was, I did think it worked. I did like at the end they said in the special this was a one-off thing. They made a funny joke about like, like they're ever going to come here, that they, would not have, that the Simpsons are not going to do their episode where they go over and meet the Griffins again. So yeah, I mean, if this was the one time we got this crossover, do you think it's a satisfying?
Yeah, I thought it was satisfying, but I am more, I think there will be another one because I think this episode is going to be really successful, and I think that they probably will re-up at some point, but I think a ways down the line.
Right. I mean, the fact that we're about to get the Futurama characters on Simpsons too, it seems like 20th Century Fox is like, hey, we own all these characters.
Let's open it up.
Let's see what happens.
Jack Bauer next.
Ooh, that'd be interesting. Let us know what you thought in the comments. Were you excited by the Family Guy and Simpsons? Did it deliver what you wanted? We'll have plenty more on both shows here at IGN.